You're listening to the Investor Success Podcast today, the hit weekly show featuring inspiring stories to help real estate entrepreneurs do more deals while increasing their net worth and cash flow. My name is Jim Ingersoll, and I am your host for this podcast today. I'm also the founder of the Investor Success Mastermind and Coaching. You can check us out at investorsuccessmastermind.com. I created this podcast to help motivate and inspire you to take massive action, and that's what it's all about today, and build your business and carve out the life that you want for yourself and that you and your family really want for the rest of your life. So I want to welcome you to the show today. If you're a regular listener, I want to welcome you back. Can you do me a big favor and leave me a review in iTunes, please, and hit the subscribe button, or leave me a comment if you're watching this in YouTube or on Stitcher or iHeartRadio. If you're tuning into the show today for the very first time, I also want to give you a huge welcome today. It's nice to have you along. Hope you check out some of the past episodes because there's a lot of great shows and a lot of great content for you. Today's no different. We have a phenomenal show for you today with a really good friend of mine. It's lined up to talk about a great flipping story. It's also a story that's very encouraging because it's very family oriented. It's very inspiring because it goes from being a math teacher to becoming really a real estate mogul in a short amount of time. And you're going to absolutely love our guest today, Max Keller. I call him Money Max because he's done so well so fast. And Max is a former math teacher. He comes to us from the Dallas-Fort Worth area. He left his cozy classroom earlier this year to begin his journey of being a full-time real estate investor, and it's been a phenomenal ride for him. Some of the very many things I really admire about Max is also the fact that he has an amazing family, including 5 wonderful girls, and his wife works at the church there. He's also always been investing in himself, investing in his network, and he is a massive action taker. When we talk about doing bandit signs, he goes out and buys 300 of them. You get the idea? And that's all allowed him to drastically accelerate his success on this journey. Whereas a lot of people sort of struggled getting over the hurdle after hurdle after hurdle, Max literally blows over those hurdles in an amazing record speed. Today we're going to talk about how he got started, where he's headed, and some of the details associated with the house he just flipped. Max Keller, welcome to the Investor Success Podcast today.
Oh, thanks, Jim. Thanks for having me.
It is really nice to have you along. And watching your journey has been inspiring for me. I mean, you came to my boot camp in February, which was awesome. You and I hooked up on the IRA Fun Cruise, which was amazing, right?
Everything.
Then you joined my coaching program, which has been phenomenal. We had the mastermind in Indiana with Tom and crew, which was mind-blowing. Then you went back to Tom's Belief event with other members of our group.
Yes.
So let's go back to a little while back before you were doing this full time. I mean, less than a year ago, you were teaching math.
Okay. Yeah. Well, for the last 7 years, I was a math teacher in a suburb of Fort Worth, just kind of a cozy suburb, really different mix of kids. Some of the kids were really struggling. Really bad. And some of them, were doing pretty well, and they're on their way to following the formula, and that's kind of what I grew up trying to learn was the formula. And that when I was growing up, the formula was you do good in school, you make good grades, you go to a good college, you get a good job, you move up the ladder, and you get to live a really, comfortable lifestyle. And so, over the course of my journey, it really started even before teaching math. I was working in business. I got my business degree at UT Austin, and, it was a good business school. So at the time, everybody's like, oh, you went to UT, here's a job. And, I would do these different jobs, and, a lot of them were just sitting in a cubicle doing finance type stuff, and it was really boring. And I met my wife at our church, and she was a teacher at the time, and I wanted to be a teacher, but I couldn't take the pay cut because in Texas, there's pretty big differences, and probably all over, between teacher pay and business pay.
Yeah, it's a big problem.
And I really didn't have my personal finances in order. I was living a real consumption lifestyle. Mm-hmm. If I got more money, the last 2 years of my business career, I was a straight commission recruiter for accounting and finance type people. Mm-hmm. And, as soon as the check came in, it went out, and I just didn't have it figured out at all. So 2008, I started my own recruiting company, and I thought that, so this is really the second time that I've started my own business.
2008 is a tough year to start a recruiting company.
It was really hard because everybody that was supposed to be hiring my folks was getting laid off.
Right.
But the biggest problem with starting the recruiting company, the biggest problem was me.
Right.
I thought I knew everything. I didn't know anything.
Right.
I thought that going to Office Depot and buying a laptop and working on my website was moving closer to my goals. That doesn't do anything. I didn't know anything about lead generation. When I was in an office and leads were coming to me, I was good at turning the leads into sales.
Right.
But when you're on your own and you have your own business, you have to generate your own leads. And I didn't know anything about that. So it didn't go well. It actually worked out because, my wife was like, this is the opportunity. You said you've been wanting to be a teacher since we met. This is your opportunity to try it. So I substitute taught for one semester. Being a substitute is not easy.
It's a tough way to go.
Remember how you worked your substitutes? I'm sure you were good, but those other kids. Whoa. But I clicked. I clicked with the kids. It was really, really good. I really liked it. At the time, I was 28, and I looked kind of young, so I didn't really want to do high school. So long story short, I got into teaching math. I was coaching football, basketball, track, and teaching math.
Oh, wow.
We had two daughters and one on the way. But I was still living like a business major, mm-hmm. and I was getting credit card debt. I still had mounds of school loans. My wife had school loans. And so the first epiphany happened was when we just sat down and did our budget for the first time. Actually, we were trying to refinance our mortgage. And we said, we're just going to be paying a mortgage forever. There's no end in sight. There has to be something different. So we did the Dave Ramsey program. I don't know if you're familiar with him. And he taught us a lot. He taught us how to save money.
Or which one did you do?
Financial Peace University.
Yeah, it's great.
Yeah. So, a lot of folks are, when they see how fast I've moved up in real estate, and they're like, well, yeah, you had good credit. You had lots of savings. Well, I had been working on that for 4 years.
Right.
For 4 years, I was teaching, and my wife worked full-time at our church, and we saved every penny. We had $20 allowance each person. We did that for 4 years. We paid off all of our credit card debt. We started saving $1,200 a month. And then that was the money that I got to use to start this business. So if I was to say what was the biggest part of how I've been successful at real estate, it was having the discipline to get my personal finances in order, because it was much easier to start securing my initial properties when my credit was good and I had, all that paid off. But it took 4 years. So I would just say, anybody listening, start today. If your credit's a mess and your spending's a mess, I don't think that flipping real estate is going to fix those problems.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what happened to me, and that was huge. And then how I got into real estate is we paid off all of our debt. I mean, this is we were thinking about it every day. I really believe, Jim, that whatever you focus on, you can be successful at.
Totally agree.
And when my wife and I were focused on paying off our debt, and just shaking the couch cushions and, paying the kids upside down for their change, we were really serious. We paid off our debt. We started saving money. We went on our first family vacation a year ago, July the 4th. So about 13 months ago. And my friend we had 4 kids at the time. We just had our 5th daughter shortly after that. So we had 4 kids, one on the way. Our friend had 6 kids, and we all rented a house in Florida.
Huh.
We went on our first family vacation, and he told me that he bought a rent house. And he just bought it off the MLS. It was cash flowing a couple $100 a month. He works for the government, kind of like I did at the time. And he said, I've got 6 kids. I've got to do something.
Right.
And so that's what got the wheels turning.
Doing nothing is no longer an option.
Doing nothing is no longer an option. I had planned, I had one Rookie Teacher of the Year. I get an award every year being a teacher. I was training the new teachers. I had student teachers. I was doing everything that I wanted to do. I really didn't want to be a principal because I loved being with the kids. That's where, it's just awesome. Right. But it wasn't paying any money. I wasn't even making business money, and I had a master's degree, 7 years experience. So I started looking into real estate, and I would go on BiggerPockets. I listened to 1 million podcasts, and I heard this one guy named Chad Carson. And he said, find somebody in your local community and learn from them. People either have time or money.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really have either, but I said, well, I can probably come up with some time. So I found a local real estate investor who owned a club here in town, had a lot of rentals. I worked for him for about 3 months from last September to December.
Yep.
And then I paid Chad, who gave me that initial advice, for some coaching, and he helped me set up my wholesaling business plan. And then it was hard because first it was hard to work for somebody for free.
Right.
A lot. Basically when I wasn't teaching, I was working for him.
Mm-hmm.
And I really appreciated everything he gave me. But, it was hard, it was hard. You think you're 34 and you think you're supposed to be at a certain level, and it felt like starting over.
Right.
But every single day I was working on it. Every single night I would come home from work at 4:00 because I would get there at school really early. And then I would get home at 4, and then from 4 to 8, I would just work. I had a walk-in closet that was my office, and it was crazy. I mean, now I have an office, and we just moved to a bigger house that's more comfortable, and it's totally different. But I would work so much from 4 to 8, then I'd eat dinner and put the kids to bed, and then from 9 until literally I passed out. And I would do that 6 days a week. Sunday, I would go to church and work a little bit in the evening. And in December, I started my own business. I put an ad on Craigslist, and I got my first motivated seller call. I remembered it was the December 11th. It was the first day. It was the day before my birthday. And I was nervous. I got that first call, my hand was shaking, and I pulled over into this church, and there's churches everywhere. It's great.
Helps.
We need more of them.
Yeah.
And so I remember talking to the guy, and it was just like they say on the podcast, when you have a real motivated seller,
right,
you can't mess it up. And so I just got the information. I tried to book the appointment, and he's like, well, I'm going to call my dad. It was the son kind of screening the guy. And then long story short, I ended up getting the house under contract. I sold it. I took title to it, and then I sold it to an investor. I just cleaned it up a little bit, and I made about $16,000. I couldn't believe it.
So your first deal, you got $16K. You found it because you took action.
Yes.
You were working full-time as a math teacher, working at evenings as an investor, and all of a sudden you made more in your part-time work than you did going full-time.
Like, I didn't think it was real, to be honest.
Right, the light bulbs sort of go off, right?
Yeah, well, it's like, I think I don't have very much. I think I have a lot of light bulbs, but they're kind of dim.
Yeah.
So one little light bulb went off.
Everybody.
And then they just kept going off as I went, and I would learn. And I think one of the best things that I did was I kept meeting new people that helped me. I met, I was working for an investor at the time. I had paid for some coaching. I met Connor Steinbrook, who's in our group, and he's such a super giving person and a super sharp guy. And, he introduced me to you, and I went out. It was kind of funny story. I never really told anybody this.
I'd love to hear it.
But I was calling Connor up, and I had just known him maybe 6 weeks.
Yeah.
And I said, hey, Connor, how's it going? He's like, good. And I was like, what are you up to? And he's like, oh, I'm just getting ready. I'm going to Virginia in a couple of weeks to see this guy, Jim. And I was like, oh, Virginia, man, I wish I could go. That sounds awesome. And he's like, well, you can if you want. You want to come with me? And I was like, I don't want to impose. I haven't known it that long. That'd be kind of weird. And he's like, no, you could split a room and we could go meet Jim and everything like that. And I was like, well, if you're sure. And I don't know if he thought I was really going to take it. Sometimes you offer things to people and you don't think they're going to really take it. Well, I did. So, man, I booked that ticket. I came out to see you, and I don't know. I was learning by the minute. You know what the first thing I learned when I was out there with y'all was?
What's that?
There's an inverse relation to how many deals you do and how fancy you dress. It was unbelievable. Like, all these people are wearing suits. They're like, I haven't done a deal yet. Right. And then these guys wearing like stained, like Tommy Bahama shirts. Right. They're like, I've got 80 rentals. I'm just like, what?
It is amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, so I was just learning, and it was just so great to meet you, Jim. Obviously, I'm a big fan. And
well, it was a great event. I mean, we really honed in on like relational capital strategies, and then you got introduced to self-directed IRAs. You met Quincy, you met Walter. which led to coming on the IRA cruise. And so you started putting all these pieces in place. And I think that all of that is what really accelerated your success, because you have jumped into this really fast and you're doing extremely well. That's why, a couple weeks ago, you sent me that text and you were like, I'm going to be to this level in the next 2 to 3 years. And I texted you back saying, I think you're going to hit there a lot faster, because you've got all the foundation is there, and you know the value of relational capital and network. And
Yes.
so you're greatly accelerating everything you're doing.
Well, I'm really enjoying it, and I've made some mistakes. A lot of times these calls, not yours, but others,
Right.
Like everybody just talks about all their success stories.
Right.
I've had some nightmares.
Yeah, so have I.
I
So is
mean,
Connor.
yeah, I bought a house that had termites. I bought, I had to fire contractors, and I was still working my full-time job. I almost got shot.
How
That
did
was
that
really,
go down?
it was very scary. I was in a
Don't
very, very bad
Don't you
neighborhood.
open carry anyways?
I normally, I don't talk about security, but let's just
I
say
know.
Texas is a secure, you can have security,
Right.
but it was the one time that I didn't. I had
So
come from
you're in a
another
bad
place.
neighborhood, and what happened?
This guy was walking past me, and he was giving me a pretty ugly look, which is normal. Maybe he thought I was a Jerry Seinfeld impersonator. I don't know.
You do look a little like Jerry.
A little from the side. Watch this.
There you go. It definitely looks like Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah, when I got a haircut, so but when I had the kind of curly thing back when I had more hair, it's fallen out because of the 5 kids. But I used to get that a lot. So, anyways, he was looking at me, and I was talking to the motivated seller. We were in a bad neighborhood in Dallas. I'm pretty much just staying in Tarrant County now, in Fort Worth. But long story short, I was okay when he was looking at me. But when he started looking around to see if anybody was looking at us, that's when I knew we were in trouble. Believe it or not, I actually had to kind of reach behind my back for a gun that wasn't there.
Yeah.
And when he saw me do that, because he was reaching too, he thought I had a gun and I wasn't an easy target, and then he left.
Huh.
And but at the time, I was buying my first house that I bought and flipped was in a really rough neighborhood because I was using my line of credit.
Yep.
And I could only afford a $22,000 house. But now things are different. I don't mess around down there. I'm buying houses that are in awesome neighborhoods that everybody wants to live in with great school districts. I'm getting, very favorable financing, and I've got an outstanding crew of contractors that do great work. And so everything's different, but you have to kind of go through those growing pains, I guess.
I've been there, man. I tell you, my brother Dave used to bird dog for me. And this was a long time ago, but he was a great bird dog, by the way. Him and my sister-in-law, Tracy, who helps me now with this podcast and stuff. And they sent me into this house, and I have a bad habit of just walking into vacant houses all the time. Like, the door's open, I'll go in, right? Or I'll go through the window or do whatever I got to do. So I get in there, and there's a bunch of people in there. And there's been probably half a dozen times like that. There's been a time where I thought I was going to get carjacked. Once I got chased by a pit bull. Once I stepped through a front porch that was weak, and all of a sudden I was on the ground. I mean, you know how it goes when you're investing and you're doing a lot of deals. You see all this crazy. I was with one guy, and he's like, "Did you see that ghost? Our house is haunted." So I mean, and I don't even believe in ghosts. I'm like, I didn't see any ghosts, but anyways, I mean, you see a lot of things, and you get a lot of experiences along the journey. That's for sure. Let's talk a little bit about this latest flip.
Yeah.
Because your journey now, you just, how long ago was it that you stopped teaching? At the end of the school year. So that was how many months ago?
Just like 3 months. So pretty much all summer. And then, it's weird. Like, I don't have any sense of time anymore.
Right.
I used to have 14 bells that told me what to do every day, 7 years. And now I don't know what day of the week it is. But yeah, I resigned in June, and then I got paid. This was really nice. It's like if you're listening and you're on unemployment, start a real estate business, because you're going to have some checks coming through, and that'll get you by till you get your first check. So all summer, I got paid, and then August 20th was my last check, and then on September 20th is the date that I should have gotten a teacher check, and instead I got this first flip check, and it was about 10 times what my old teacher checks were.
And I remember when you sent me that text, you're like, how can it be possible that I was a math teacher a few months ago and now I'm making more than lawyers doctors, CPAs. Remember that text?
Yeah,
it's like you all of a sudden everything just clicks, right?
it's weird. It feels like the line between, like some days I feel like, gosh, like I'm going to be a millionaire. And then the next day I'm like, oh no, I need another deal. I'm going to go out of business. And it's happened fast because I've accelerated. I felt like I've used house money. So when I get a deal, instead of going out and buying, a fancy shirt or a fancy watch, I join a mastermind.
Right.
I buy 10 books and I read a book a week. I've been reading a lot. I don't think there's anything that hasn't already been done that somebody didn't write a book about.
Right. I read a lot of books as well. What have you been reading lately?
I almost finished with E-Myth Mastery.
Oh, yeah. Let's talk about that a little bit because I got a text from you or something on Facebook about that as well. What was the one thing that you started doing after reading E-Myth Mastery?
Well, they talk about two main things. One of them is the difference between working in your business and on the business. And so a lot of people have their own business and they think they're entrepreneurs, but really an entrepreneur doesn't need to show up to their office all the time or is more focused on growing the business than whatever it is like the technician part of the business. So, because growing up, some of my friends' parents had businesses and they were there all the time.
Right.
And I was like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to.
A lot of people have businesses that are really more like a job.
Yeah, I ran into some people in our mastermind and other people,
yeah.
and me included, where, instead of focusing on growth, we're talking to the plumber about the hot water heater, and it's like somebody else can do that. So E-Myth Mastery was a lot about that mindset. And then the other thing is what a consumer or consumption society, what it really means and what it means to take money and just consume it. And my wife and I, we've been talking about it and praying about it a lot. And that's why we're so laser focused on not using this opportunity to just increase our lifestyle, but use the opportunity to buy one rental property a month. And, they're not going anywhere. They're insured, putting it into a wealth building asset instead of just using it up.
Yeah, it's a great way to say it. I love it when you say it's a wealth building asset. That's a good plan to go. Let's talk a little bit about this flip that you just did because you did really well on it. How did you find it? How did you start to put the pieces together to get it rehabbed? How did you figure out what to do in the rehab? All the way through selling it and going through the home inspection, the closing process, from A to Z. I know you went through my training and you used some of that, but let's talk about, I guess, the beginning. Like, how did you find it? How did you finance it? What did you do to it? And things like that.
Okay, sure. Well, this was a Craigslist ad. I refreshed it just in the middle of the day, like we're talking right now. I just hit refresh. The lady called me from the Craigslist ad, and she was very, very surprised that I answered. And she said, I've been calling all these ads on Craigslist. Right. I've called 10 ads. And you're the first person that picked up the phone. So that's
a huge takeaway for everybody listening to this podcast. Answer your phone.
Or pay an answering service. Right. I have an answering service now. So if my phone rings and I don't answer it in 4 rings, it goes to the answering service. And I get the best calls. People say, I talked to your secretary and I call back.
You're using CallRail. We talked about that in our mastermind in Indiana. Who do you use for your answering service?
I use Voice Nation, and it was a little rocky at first, but with CallRail, you can record the calls.
Yeah.
So then I just sent them the recorded call that wasn't at the customer service level that I wanted it to be, and they fixed the problem. They did some training, so it was awesome. But yeah, now they're answering the calls, and so the phone's getting answered. I heard somebody on a podcast say, if you want to double the amount of leads that you're getting in, answer the phone.
Right.
And a lot of people out there are just like, just get a Google Voice number and have it go straight to voicemail. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But, I just think that if you can answer it live or pay somebody to answer, it's even better.
All right. So you put an ad on to Craigslist. You got a call. It was from a lady that needed to sell. Why did she need to sell? She
wanted and needed. So she was kind of in between. But basically, they inherited the house from her grandpa or her father-in-law or something like that. and they've been living there for a couple years, and they just wanted to move on. And there was a lot of half-completed projects in the house, and they didn't want to mess around with realtors. They were just kind of ready to like move on.
Right.
They didn't pay off the house; it was received through an inheritance. So, they were kind of okay with whatever. She wanted a lot more than I could pay her, but I told her that. I'll present all the information to her. I'll share neighborhood information that I'm privy to,
Right.
and then she can make the best decision for her family.
That's a good way to put it. So you guys, obviously, when you met face to face, you came to terms, you wrote a contract.
Yeah. And it was good for them. It was good for me. We wrote the contract, and then they needed to live there a couple weeks, so we did a leaseback agreement.
Nice.
Just standard stuff.
Good way to do it. I mean, you got to solve the problem and make it easy for them to sell you the house versus somebody else, say from Homevestors or wherever else, right?
Right.
So you got the deal off Craigslist by putting an ad. Did you put it in real estate for sale, or where do you put it?
I think it was services offered, real estate services offered.
Very good.
Yeah, so I put in services offered. I do want to mention that, she called me at 12, and, by like 7 o'clock that night, I had a contract in hand.
Excellent.
So I really feel like it's important to get out there quickly. And if you can't hire somebody to be on your team to, be a second person to go out and help you buy,
it's good
so that helped. Then I had a lot of time to plan the rehab, and it wasn't a lot. It was more of a cosmetic rehab. All the major systems were okay.
How much was the house that you paid?
I bought it for around $100,000.
Okay. And then you put a cosmetic rehab in. What does that consist of for you?
It was a new kitchen. We actually kept the original cabinets and repainted them. We did a really nice granite countertop in the bathroom and in the main kitchen. We did a $1,600 slide-in stove. We opened up the kitchen. The older style.
There's so you put a $1,600 stove in. That's a very high-end appliance.
It was, but the reason we did it was because we built a bar area. People really like the open concept.
They love them.
So you can't really put, a freestanding range at a bar. It just doesn't, it needs to be all smooth with the granite.
Yeah.
So that was a big purchase. And I originally bought a freestanding stove, and then we put it in and it looked terrible. And they're like, "What are you doing?" And it's like, "Well, I don't really know yet. I guess I'm returning this one and buying a different one." I didn't even know what a slide-in was. I didn't know any of that stuff.
Oh, you've learned a lot. So
it doesn't matter.
So you put good money into the kitchen. The kitchen always gives you big benefit, and you really boost value in the kitchen. So granite countertop, paint the cabinets, really nice appliances, really nice stainless appliances.
Yeah, stainless. There actually already was a stainless dishwasher, but we took that out because we wanted them all to match. Right. I pretty much just did everything you said to do in your rehab module from from joining your program.
Sure.
I just did everything you said. I replaced them with a stainless package. I put in nice granite. I put about $4,000 or $3,000 in the little bathroom, $4,000 in the other bathroom. Updated tile. People like the glass, tile backsplash accent. Just the standard stuff.
What did you do in the bathrooms?
In the bathrooms, we did like a $1.99 porcelain tile up the sides. We didn't replace the tub, but we refinished it. From now on, I won't. But it still looked good.
Yeah, sometimes you can do that. I just did one like that last week.
We just did a new tub on the next one that we did, and I really like that. But we did just modernized it. A lot of times the older bathrooms have got the small like 4x4 tiles. Yeah. If you take those out and put a 12x12, or we did a rectangular tile floor that really popped, and it was awesome. Just new vanities, new mirrors, new potties. We excel.
It right up, doesn't it?
Yeah, trim is huge. I really believe in trim. Just trim pops. It makes the paint look really good. I love trim. So, and my guys are really, really good carpenters. So they're just like artists.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
And what kind of flooring did you do?
They already had some glue down, and so we left that, some wood like glue down that looked really, really good.
Like a laminate type thing.
It was really nice. And then we added carpet to the bedrooms, and we didn't really do any floors. We would have, if the market wasn't so hot here in Dallas, we wouldn't have gotten by with that. But because it was, we kept the tile floors in the kitchen.
When you bought the house for $100,000, how much did you figure you would put into that house?
A lot less than I did.
Yeah, that's normal. It's good we can laugh about it.
Oh
So
man.
what was your initial? I mean, it's really hard when you're meeting a motivated seller and you're trying to come up with a price like, oh, I think it needs X amount. So do you remember what your initial thought was?
Yeah, $15 a square foot is kind of the
Yeah.
round rule of thumb that I would use for a cosmetic rehab if it didn't need any major systems. So that would be about 23,000,
Mm-hmm.
and that's what I had thought, and then it ended up stretching to like 31.
Oh, that isn't so bad.
No, that wasn't too bad. I try to be really really fair when I buy the houses, but
Yeah.
if I buy them and I don't buy them right, I lose money.
Right.
So I have to be conservative on the future ARV, and I have to be overestimate a little bit on the rehab.
Right.
So, I presented that information. I bought it for that price,
Those are
and
good tips.
really well.
So what was your initial thought when you put the house under contract for the ARV? Do you remember?
Yeah, I thought that. Well, actually, I didn't even tell you this, but I wasn't even going to flip it. Initially, I was just going to rent it
Right.
because it was across the street from a award-winning elementary school,
Wow.
and I had some long-term financing. I had to leave 20% in the deal.
Mm-hmm.
But then I just decided to flip it because the neighborhood was too good, and there'll be a time very soon to collect rentals.
Right.
So that changed a little bit. But initially, I said 155 to 160.
And when you were done, what did you figure out it would go for?
When it was done, we listed it for 167, and then it ended up we got 10 offers in 2 days, and it got bid up to 175, and then after some concessions, we settled on 172.
Oh, you settled.
Yeah, I know,
Isn't that
right?
awesome?
I had a really tough life.
So you bought it for 100. You put roughly 30 in it, and you
Yes.
sold it for 175.
Yes.
And then, okay, so then you had to learn to list the house. You listed it with a realtor, right? How was
Yeah,
that experience? You got a realtor on your team now?
Yes, and he's exclusive, and we have a really good relationship. He
Good.
provides me a lot of value. The first house that I flipped, that I just did so on, the one in the kind of rough neighborhood, I tried to flat list that one
Yeah.
and do it myself, and that was a nightmare. I'll never do that again. I'm not very good at like detailed oriented stuff and paperwork and anything that requires me to fill out like more than one page. I start
Right.
spacing out. So a good realtor provides a ton of value.
I agree.
He charges me a very very discounted rate.
Good.
So
That's how I do it as well, Max. So that's good.
yeah, and I think I got the idea from you.
So that's good. And then, so he helped you list it. Did he take the pictures? Did he write the listing? How did that work out?
Yes, and he helped me. He helped me rehab it. I told
Awesome.
him. I think one of the keys that's helped me a lot because there's been some things I haven't done right, but one of the things I feel like I have is I haven't tried to act like I know everything because I definitely don't, and I really do try to listen and pay attention and get help from people who are experienced. And so I told my realtor that from the beginning.
Right.
He's used to working with investors that think they know everything.
Right. So
And
refreshing change, I'm sure.
Yeah, I just said, Josh, you have been in hundreds of houses. I've been in like 10. So at the very beginning, I had him walk through it and tell me, well, what do you think? You're in charge of selling this. So what would it take for you to sell this house? And he gave me the suggestions, and I did 99% of them.
Mm-hmm.
And then he, did the listing, and he had me fill out some forms. And then he pays for a professional photographer out of his own pocket, and that makes a huge difference. Some of these
Sweet.
people, the pictures are horrible.
Oh, pictures are a huge part of marketing for sure.
Yeah, so our picture guy, he's done a couple of them for us now, and he does a great job. So I really appreciate him. And he takes the pictures are incredible,
How
And
did it go after home inspection? Did you get a repair addendum? You have to do some things. What happened?
Yeah, there was a repair addendum. We had to do some things. We weren't really even sure if it was going to appraise for what we wanted it to.
Well, you listed it so much higher than you initially thought, and then it went.
Yeah.
Then you had 10 offers. I mean, that's awesome.
Right. So we just said, this is an as-is house. This house was from the early 60s.
Right.
Not everything's going to be perfect, and we can't make it everything perfect. But, what if we came down a little on the price? People usually like that.
Yeah, they do. So that's
So,
cool.
yeah.
So what did you walk away with when it closed, approximately? Do you remember how much you made?
Yeah, about 34,000. Gosh, I sort of can't even believe that just came out of my mouth.
So, a few months of part-time work, and it was as much as you used to make 6 months teaching or whatever, right? It's mind blowing.
It is. It's like,
What a journey, huh?
I'm almost like, I'm not in tears because I'm a tough
Right.
guy. I'm a karate man. We bruise
Yeah,
on the
yeah,
inside. But
yeah.
I don't know. I can't believe it, and it just keeps happening.
Right.
I just bought another house. So what I did was when I got that check, I called my flyer guy, my marketing guy, and I
Oh,
said,
yeah, yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
let's put out 10,000 more flyers. And I got a call when I was in Chicago, and I have a friend in another city who I'm helping get into real estate. And I said, hey, can you call this person because I don't have time and set up an appointment for me? And he set the appointment up. So I got back from Tom's Belief event on Thursday night real late, and then Friday I went to go buy this house, and then I got under contract Monday, and then I sold it like 3 days later.
Wow.
And made a 5-figure profit on that one.
Wow. How about that, huh?
Yeah.
So our listeners are probably wondering, like, seriously, how do you do 10,000 flyers? I mean, you're Massive Action Max, but, how do you figure out how to put out 10,000 flyers, man? I mean, that's phenomenal.
Well, I got the idea from Joe, my first mentor in Arlington. He told me a story of how he put out like 5,000 flyers in the neighborhood. He paid somebody to do it.
Yep.
He got a phone call, and the person said, we want to sell our house, but we want to stay in it and pay you rent. And he bought the house from the person for a fair price and then rented it back to him. And it was like a home run. And so I was like, so that was actually one of the first marketing things I did. Jim, I feel like Dave Ramsey says, if you live like no one else, you can someday live like no one else.
Right.
And I really feel like if you do things that nobody else is willing to do, you can get things that nobody else has.
Yeah, I agree.
So on December 31st, I remember this very clearly. It was me, my brother, and my neighbor's son, who's like 14. I got all these flyers printed out, and we were walking the neighborhood, putting flyers on doors. And every TV we looked in, they were watching some really cool bowl game, or maybe it was the first of
January 1st.
Yeah, it was some really big teams, and everybody was talking about it. And it was freezing, the wind and everything, and I was putting flyers on doors, and I didn't get a deal out of that. It took like 3 days to put out 2,000 flyers, so I put a hold to flyers. And then as soon as I got some deals, I paid somebody to put out flyers. Mm-hmm. And you can find them in your local market. My guy charges me like 13 cents a flyer. And it takes me about 10,000 flyers to get a deal. I'm still testing different designs. But what I want to say about flyers, if anybody's interested, is that, the benefit is that there's people in our market, if they're on a list somewhere, they're getting hit with just letter after letter after letter of direct mail. But the flyers, sometimes it's people who aren't on a list.
Right.
And this lady that I bought the house from was 95. She's the original owner from 1955.
Wow.
So what is that, like 61 years?
Yeah, that's freaking off the hook, isn't it?
It is. And, she was like in tears when I bought her house. Like, she was so happy.
Don't you love the emotion when you solve somebody's problem like that? I love it. It's very rewarding.
It was hard for me not to cry. I was trying not to because my grandma helped raise me. And, really the whole reason that I got to this part is because of her. She kept me in church. I was taking her to church, and that's how I met my wife. My wife's helped me so much. And it's like, I was seeing this 95-year-old woman, and my grandma would have been like 96 this year. She passed away. And I was thinking, like, don't lose it, And so I was just trying to like really, because, I went to the nursing home, a retirement home for her to sign everything. And, she's totally with it, super sharp. But I was like, she deserves some respect. She deserves somebody to give a fair offer. And she deserves somebody just to like not get all emotional. So I think I cried a little in the parking lot.
Have you stayed in contact with her?
Yeah. I mean, we haven't even closed. We're closing a week from today.
After closing, you should go back and see her in about a month and talk to her about inherited Roth IRAs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've talked to my mom about that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. All right. Well, Max, where are you headed with all this? Because you're quickly increasing your deal flow. You've added systems. You've added team. Where do you see yourself 6 months from now? Because the last several months have been phenomenal.
Okay, well, I got my, it doesn't look good, but I got my VTO done. I read the book Traction.
Yeah, Traction's a great book.
Yeah, and I'm just going to run my business from it. I know a lot of people in our
EOS.
group. So, yeah, EOS. I just hired an EOS integrator.
Good.
And he's going to help me, for a consulting fee, put all this into place in my business and come up with all my core processes so I can hire correctly. Mm-hmm. But yeah, by the end of the year, my goal is my 3-month goal right now is to get 6 more deals, buy 6 more houses before the end of the year, start doing some direct mail instead of just the flyers, more targeted. Find a couple more GCs to handle multiple projects at once because we're doing like 3 or 4 flips at a time. And then I'm going to hire some folks. I'm going to hire a project coordinator, and I'm going to hire a bookkeeper and hire somebody to help me go buy the homes.
Awesome. Well, Max, that is amazing. My grandson just walked in the room.
Good. Yeah, I've got 5 little girls out there probably banging on the door.
So I'm going to sign off because I got to go see this little fella, Max. But thank you so much for sharing so openly. I always love it, and I can't wait to get back on the next coaching call with you either. You're truly a giver, and you're truly blessed in many ways, which we absolutely love having you as part of our community as well. So congrats to everything. I think you're a great guy, and you're blessed with an incredible family. But Massive Action Max makes the money. From math teacher to real estate investor, entrepreneur of the year. From Dallas, Fort Worth, Max Keller. Thank you so much for being with me today, man.
Thanks to you, Jim. I appreciate all your help.
That's it for this very special episode of the Investor Success Podcast. Thanks to all of our continued success listeners for tuning in again. I am certain that you're inspired. You're going to want to go back and listen to this again and probably take some notes and get yourself moving in the right direction like Massive Action Max here. Again, my name is Jim Ingersoll, and I want to thank you for tuning into our podcast today. Hit subscribe, leave us a comment. Whether you're watching on YouTube, Stitcher, or in iTunes, we really love having you along on this journey and hope you guys get out there and make some great deals. See you later.
Thanks for joining us today. Be sure to share this podcast with your friends and social media contacts, and visit us online at www.bigmoneyinvestor.com.